So I want to go ahead and get started on, to me, time management, by far and away the most important thing that we can master or we can invest in, both as, salespeople, as family members and fathers and spouses and all that, and then in our relationships across business and personal. So I want to identify three key takeaways that we're focused on leaving with today. Number one is understanding our 24 hours. Number two, really putting a set of values in place for how we value our time. And then really, how do we structure our day? How do we make sure we're not just looking at time management as like a set of appointments, but we look at the entire picture of everything we're doing. Most importantly, I want to get started and talk about our 24 hours. So there's four major components of time management that I think is important for everybody here to just kind of like you look at as building blocks. Number one is environment. The environment that we work within every single day is a big indicator of how productive we're going to be and also how efficient and effective we're going to be. So, sometimes, I see guys, they work from home, they work from the office, they work from a coffee shop, and everybody works differently. There's people that work more effectively from home than they do in an office. I have people when they come to the office, they say there's, so much going on here, they get distracted easily. And then vice versa. I've had people tell me at home they get distracted. So environment is a big part of this. Number two is understanding the importance of transitions in scheduling out our day, which is a really big one. So when I think of transitions, like transitions are another foundational piece of time management. People lose so much time in their transitions, whether it's, getting out of bed in the morning, whether it's leaving their house and going to work, whether it's going from appointment to appointment. Transitions are a really key, critical part of just effective time management. So we'll talk about that today. Number three, preparation and planning. Such an important component to how we effectively manage our days. And the last one is execution. So when I think about our 24 hours, I think it's important. This is one thing that's been said to me many times, and I think it's important for us to all look at is you can, waste time, you can spend time, and you can invest your time. You can categorize it however you want. But the truth of the matter is, there is no getting more time. Like we all have the same 24 hours. So when I think about, investing time or the concept of it, I hear this all the time from people say like, oh, I invested, 2 hours in doing this. Truth of the matter is like you can invest 2 hours in doing something, a day in doing something, but that doesn't mean you're going to get an extra hour. It's not like, you're making an investment in a stock or you're investing your money and you're going to get something in return, or you have the expectation of getting something in return. When you invest your time, you don't get any extra hours. You don't get any extra time. So we all get the same 24 hours. And it's important we understand that how we use our 24 hours is critical, not to just the success of our business, but the success of our families, the success of our relationships, and long-term, obviously the success of, our health. So those are all the components of what I look at as, why are we doing this? Why is this important to me? It isn't just about work, guys. This is about holistically understanding that we want to have strong marriages. We want to have strong relationships. We want to be healthy and be able to be there for our families for a very long period of time. And in order to effectively do that, we got to manage our time. We got to make sure we're making time to be healthy. We're making time to exercise. We're making time to have a great relationship with our children and with our family members. So if you don't prioritize your time management, one of those things are going to lag. When you were doing really great in work, a lot of times people are not doing so great on the home front. When you're doing really great on the home front, you might not be doing so great, with your relationship. So like this whole exercise is about maximizing those 24 hours and making sure that we're keeping in consideration all of the things that are important to time management. So first and foremost, I always want to set the expectation of setting your goals. So, health, business, and relationships, having goals. There isn't a person on here that can't get better at something that they're doing. Andrew Heffer had 10 loans last week. Patton had, 8. Tyler had 7. I don't know if those are the exact numbers, but those guys had great weeks. And if you were to ask them today what their focus is. Believe me when I tell you, they're not focused on last week. They're focused on their goals for this week, because that's how they got there. That's how they became top producers, is they're always forward thinking. So in all these areas, it's important that we understand that setting goals is critical. Making sure we identify our non-negotiables is super critical. So, whether it's in your health, in your relationships, or your family, or your business, you have to have non-negotiables. If you don't clearly prioritize your non-negotiables, I can tell you this, that things become easy to break. It becomes easy to, have a couple of good days of success in your work schedule and your sales activity schedule, and then a fourth day where you break all the momentum that you had, because you're overcompensating versus having a consistency in everything you do by planning for all the things that you do. So I want everybody to have a key takeaway right now of just, it's important for us to set goals for all of those things. This is not just about our professional careers. This is about goals for all things. Quality of time we want to spend with our family members, with our relationships that drive our businesses, with investing or in spending time on us getting better, whether that's being on this daily sales huddle right now, whether it's being in the coaching program. All of these things you're going to have goals for. So number one, define what those goals are. It's the only way to build a successful time management structure. So now once you set your goals, identify the tasks to achieve your goals. So, again, I gave the examples of all those different areas. I'm going to focus, for starters, on work and really just seeing what I've seen and what I've learned since we started tracking our sales activity, because I can tell all of you that it's been an eye-opening experience going from last July of us starting to track our sales activities to now, because I can see very clearly how the inputs impact the outputs, and how training and coaching and the content that we put on the Daily Sales Huddle can influence improvement in all the areas that drive our businesses. So it took us being able to have visibility to tracking our activities to really understand the tasks that matter to our businesses. And this might be, everybody on here might be saying that makes all the sense in the world. But most companies don't, and most salespeople don't track their activities. This is not something that 90% of the industry is doing. So I want us to understand is it's important for whatever the goal is, whether it's, again, like I said, personal health, relationships with our family members, partnerships, strengthening our partnerships with our referral sources, or of course, increasing our growth in our performance and our production. We need to identify the tasks that drive those goals, that help us achieve those goals. So you got to write those down. And you have to quantify how much time you need to spend on those tasks in order to achieve your goals. So, prime example right now is we're having this conversation around the platform that we're building to replace SalesScreen, and one of the user experiences we're focused on tracking is not just what sales activities we do, because right now we know quantitatively what everybody's doing sales activity wise, but really how much time are we investing in doing it, and when are we doing it? Is it something we're kind of doing sporadically throughout the day? Is it something that we're blocking an hour and a half here or an hour and a half there? So we're doing time blocking to make sure we knock out our tasks. And really, I think for all of you, this is a question that you need to ask yourselves is do you have a plan every single day? Are you qualitatively blocking specific times of the day? Are you making time for the tasks that are going to help you achieve your goals? So, number one, I'll just put it out there. Just as an example, identify the tasks required for you to achieve your goals and the most effective hours for you to perform those tasks. Like that those things go hand in hand. Calling, if you're on the East Coast and you block 8 o'clock to 9:30 at night for your sales activities, you might not achieve the goals that you're looking to achieve. Calling realtors at that time of the night might not be effective, right? So you got to make sure you're blocking the right times of the day, and you're accounting for the time that's around the time that you're blocking. So I always put it out there, and I sit here and I say hey, listen, people don't realize when they transition, they go on 3 appointments in a day. They don't realize how much time they lose within those transitions. You go on 3 appointments and you're getting in a car and you're driving to different appointments. No matter where you live and how close you live to anything, you're going to lose 30 minutes going each direction, each way. So to me, if you have 3 appointments, that means you're losing an hour in transition for each of those appointments, in between each of those appointments. Now, the question is, are you blocking time while you're in the car to make phone calls? Do you have everything printed out so you can follow up with past customers or follow up with real referral sources? Or are you just getting in the car, putting on the music and spending your half hour, or, investing your half hour on your way to the car onto your next appointment, just listening to, tunes or whatnot? This is the opportunity for optimization, is understanding that transitions is the second biggest block of time where people lose time. It's sleep is the biggest block, and you don't really lose time, but that's the biggest block of opportunity for optimization. And then transitions, when you're coming and going, getting up in the morning. I always say it's like feet to the floor, out the door, 25 minutes. That's my goal every single day, is like, when I'm groggy and I'm not getting out the door in 25 minutes, I literally, I measure it. I look at the time that like from the first alarm goes off, and I calculate how long did it take me to get the hell out of the door. And when I'm lazy, it could take me 40 minutes. When I'm really on top of it, it can get me, I can be out the door in 18 minutes. That's shave, shower, put suit on, get the hell out of the house. So like, there's opportunities in all those things. So we really want to be cognizant of how long does it take for us to do the things that we need to do, and what time do we need to block, not just for them, but before we get started and after we get started. So identify the tasks that you need to do on a daily basis. You cannot ignore certain things. You can't just sit here and block time for the things that you need to do to achieve your goals. You also need to be able to block the time for the things you need to do for your life. Nobody else can replace you. You can't, no matter how good of a manager you are. I know Ravi was on here. He's great at delegating. Okay. He can't delegate somebody to eat for him. Okay. He can't delegate somebody to sleep for him. Like, he's got to do those things. So like, this goes to like, you have to identify the things you need to do, and you got to schedule them into your week. If you need to pick up your kids from school and nobody else can do that for you, you got to schedule that. You can't have a false illusion that somebody's going to do that for you. So it's important when we're going into this, we're identifying not only the tasks that we need to do for us to be successful and achieve our goals, but we also need to, time manage and put the tasks that we need to do to just live, sleep, eat, all the other important things to serve our family and contribute to our families and our relationships. So that's number two. Number three is we got to break down all these tasks into 4 buckets. And these are 4 buckets that this is a system that I use. This isn't a system that everybody has to use, but I want to present to you guys my approach and my thought process about these things. And it really, it'll determine my reaction to things. And I'll get messages from many of you, and you'll see, like, sometimes I have a high urgency to those messages based upon what you're communicating to me is the issue or what you're bringing to my attention. And sometimes I'm like, hey, this can wait till next week, or this can wait till tomorrow, because I already have my day so far planned out that if it's not urgent and important, we'll get into these categories, I'm not going to change what I'm doing for something that isn't more important than what I've planned. Okay. You got to make sure you're able to prioritize what you're doing so that you can achieve your goal. If you're a very reactive person, every single time something comes up, you're sidetracking the things you plan to do for the day, the likelihood you're going to be successful is not very high. The likelihood you're going to be disciplined in your time management is not going to be very, very high. So the 4 buckets I look at is, number one, what's urgent? Okay, urgent. We know the things that are urgent. Okay. If you have a purchase closing today at 3:00 and you get a message that something came up that's going to prevent that from closing, you're going to have a high level of urgency. You got to respond to that, right? What's not urgent? Okay. If you have a borrower that is pre-approved, that's not looking to buy for 6 months, and they leave you a voicemail and, they want to see how the market's doing, it's important that you get back to them. It's not urgent that you get back to them. Okay. You can get back to them in an hour or a couple hours or even later tonight. What's important. Okay. Things are important that aren't urgent. Okay. It's important that we complete our continuing education by the end of the year. It's not important that we complete it by the end of the day, right? Like, we got to be able to have a value system where we're clearly able to delineate what's important versus what's not important. Okay. So, it's important for us to do certain things. There's other things that can just wait, and they could be backlogged, and it's okay for us to get to them at another time. So these are the 4 buckets. Now, how I look at it is, you got to kind of, sometimes these things are bucketed together. So, things that are urgent and important need to happen immediately. Okay. That's priority. Things that are urgent but not important are things that need to happen, and you can wait a couple hours, or you don't have to derail what you're currently actively doing in order to do those things. If something's urgent and important, you probably got to stop what you're doing, focus on getting it done and attack the issue. If it's urgent but not important, you're in a situation where you can get to it later on today. It's not the end of the world if you don't get to it. Now, things can be not urgent and important. Okay, so that's another one. Again, going back to that continued education situation. The key here, guys, is if you can't prioritize and put things in a bucket, into one of these buckets, what you're going to find is, again, you're not going to get into consistency of being proactive in your day. This is where I see people become reactive. This is where the shiny object syndrome comes into play, or people see something that somebody else is doing, something they think is important, and all of a sudden they go down a rabbit hole. At the end of the day, the discipline of managing your day comes down to understanding that there's only so many things that can throw you off your schedule, and that can exclusively be the things you categorize as urgent and important. And the more you protect that, the more disciplined you are with that, the more balanced you'll be in the goals that you set at the beginning of this presentation for your relationships, your family, your health, your wealth, and of course, in growing your business. So the things that don't fit in that bucket are the things that you got to eliminate. Okay. Now, it's easy for me to say, but I'll just give you examples. At this point, 10 years ago or 8 years ago, I used to love fantasy football. I used to love a lot of things that I don't do today. And really what happens over time is, I look at it and say, you have to start to make decisions, okay? You have these goals related to your business. You have these goals related to your family. You have these goals related to your relationships, okay? And there's only so much time that you have. So over time, you start to sit there and choose, like, does it matter that I watch the Netflix special of the show of the week? Does it matter that I follow every sport? Does it matter that I go to every single thing that's in my local community? Over time, I'm sure you guys have all made these decisions. You start to pick and choose. For me, the most important thing is understanding that in your business, this is where people can be a little bit more fickle. They can punt, the meetings that they need to have with their agents or the sales activities they need to be doing daily for something that is inconsequential, like, hey, I need to go see the eclipse today. Okay. Like, that sounds like a really important thing. Go see the eclipse, right? Like, realistically, I've yet to ever meet anybody that's like, I regret missing the, solar eclipse. Sorry, John Bauman and Sean, but like, that's just the reality. You got to pick and choose the things that are important to you, because if you lose an hour going outside to look at the sun, that's a valuable hour on your Monday. So to me, it's like, you got to pick and choose these things, and you have to, when you're putting a structure in place for time management, you have to knowingly be self-aware of, like, can you really eliminate certain things from your schedule? Can you say no more often than not to the things that are going to get in the way of you achieving your goals? Now, here's why it's important, guys. Here's what anybody here have a Whoop band? A bunch of you guys have Whoop bands? Okay. So, Whoop band tells you how, your sleep impacts your focus and impacts your energy for the next day, right? Tells you if you drink alcohol, how it impacts your next day, your recovery, and the quality of your sleep impacts your focus. So, like, when we talk about eliminating anything, these are not just like fantasy football and watching a Netflix special. It's also the habits that get in the way of you being able to be your most effective self. If your goal is to make whatever, a gazillion dollars or whatever your next step is, and you're losing a day a week because you're hungover from watching football on Sunday, well, you just lost 20% of your week. Okay. Like, that's not good. You're in a situation where you're 20% less likely to be successful. So when I say eliminate things, it's not just the things that, like, might be a half hour there, 45 minutes there. It's also the things that derail your ability to be successful for a whole day at a time, or potentially within the middle of your week. So keep that in mind. Set a daily schedule. Consistency is key. And this is the most important thing I would recommend to everybody here, is you want to build a schedule that you can be consistent with. Focus, when you're building your calendar, you want to focus on a couple building blocks, which is, number one, whatever time blocks that you're going to have for your sales activities, for your transition home and to work, certain meetings that you do every single week, you want to be consistent with it. You don't want to just block it for today. You want to block it and say, hey, I'm going to block my sales activities for today from 11 to 12:30, but I'm going to make it reoccurring for every Monday for this time slot. If you can commit to it, and that's the key, is you got to be able to commit to it, but don't schedule for today. Schedule for the consistency of a month. Really evaluate your schedule and say, what is my best 90 minutes per day or per week for me to do these activities? The more consistent you can be, the more this is going to become a habit and not a one-off thing. I see a lot of people start with building a schedule and they're not thoughtful of, well, a week from now I'm going on vacation, or a week from now I've got an appointment. It's like, set a time block that you can consistently and reliably pick and choose and know that you're going to show up every single day and do that. You don't have to focus on scheduling out 10 hours a day or 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day. Just start with 90 minutes or 2 hours if you can. Number two, use every minute. I think this is important. On my schedule, I have my sleep block on there. I have a block that when I'm going to the gym, I have a transition, a half hour before I go, a half hour after I go. So I know that I have my transitions blocked. If I'm going to be on the Daily Sales Huddle, like I have a meeting right after this with Todd and Chad, I blocked off the whole hour in case this goes long. I knew I was going to make up for that extra 15 minutes or 10 minutes that this goes to not take time out of our time together. So like, use every minute, okay? Plan, anticipate what could happen. Anticipate, hey, I'm drinking a lot of water. I got to, take, 10 bathroom breaks today. Like, you got to anticipate these things. You got to block for these things. If not, you're going to be in a situation where, again, you're showing up late, you're canceling meetings, and still to this day, these are all things that I do. I'm, by no way, shape, or form perfect, but I'm really focused on getting better. I'm really focused on optimization. So making sure you make every minute count. And I'll just put this out there. We're talking a lot about work, but same thing with our family, guys. Like, it's critical. Like, to me, what I've learned is, like, if I don't make a plan when I'm going to pick up my kids on the weekends, like, we don't do fun stuff. Like when I make a plan, I'm like, okay, we're going to go to the jump park, and then we're going to go to the mini golf, and then we're going to go do this. Like, we've got a plan. We're doing stuff. It's fun. We're staying busy, and we have a great day. If I just go pick them up and wing it, it's not a great day. It's like, we're just sitting there looking at each other. I'm asking them what they want to do. Like, to me, it's like planning for every minute counts, being prepared for circumstances. It's going to rain out. I was going to do something outside. Like, it matters. It's important for you to do those things, because that's ultimately what will allow you to effectively match your time. But do the things that you're supposed to be doing during that time. Again, we talked about environment as being a big part of this. So evaluate and optimize is something I do every single week. You block time for sales activities and you don't get it done. You block time for something and it doesn't happen. You got to evaluate what went wrong. Hey, I blocked 90 minutes to make calls and I only made 3 phone calls. What sidetracked you? And that's where you start to evaluate, okay, like, hey, I'm going to turn my notifications on my phone off. I'm going to shut down all my windows when I'm doing this situation. Or I'm going to print out, like, there's some guys out in Utah, Carter and Anthony, they told me, like, hey, we print everything out. We shut our screen off. And when we're making our calls, like, we're not distracted at all. Hey, whatever it takes for you to be successful is what it takes. I'm a big believer in that mindset of eliminating, distractions. We'll make sure you stay on track the best. But evaluate and optimize. Look at every single meeting. What could have gone better? Did it go the way that you were hoping for it to go? What can I change or adjust from the next time? Hey, if I schedule my appointments, my sales activities at a block where everybody's at lunch, I'm going to sit there and call a lot of people, and they're going to tell me they're busy because they're at lunch. Maybe I adjust that to an hour later or an hour earlier so that doesn't happen again. But you can't set it and forget it. You got to learn every single day and every single week from what you're doing and how to make it better. So that's a big one. I'm going to open it up to questions, but I just want to put this out there, and this is an important one. I was trying to speed through this because I know we're coming up against solar eclipse for our friends, but I want to put this out there, going back to the core things, environment, transitioning, preparation, execution. The people that I've learned are the most effective at time management are the people that understand the importance of having a consistent environment. Whether it's your office, your home office, whatever it is, that's a key critical component of it. And the more consistent that environment is, the more consistent you will be in your success. Number 2 is the less transitions you take, the more consistent you'll be in success. The more times you get in your car on a daily basis, the less likely you're going to be productive and effective with what you're doing. So, dedicate 1 day to appointments, dedicate a day and a half to appointments, but understand the more days that you're just sitting, focused on the things you need to be focused on, the more consistent you're going to be. Preparation and planning, having everything ready for you when you start the week. Printing out, whoever you have to call for the day, having that ready to go. If you have a presentation that you need to do, reviewing it ahead of time, going through it once or twice to make sure you're ready to present on that information. Planning ahead of times if people cancel. Like, to me, that's one of the things that happens all the time is like, if somebody cancels, I got a backlog list of things that are 5-minute activities or less that I have a backlog of hours of activities. So if somebody cancels and I have 15 extra minutes, I can go knock out 15 minutes worth of activities. If somebody cancels, I have an hour. I have an hour of activities I could backlog. I'm like, okay, I can spend, this is my time to actually put together my agenda for next week. Like, I put a time value on each of those things. So preparation and planning for, if everything goes right and everything goes wrong. And the last one is the only way to deliver effective outcomes is to execute. Like, you got to execute when you sit down. If you're going to work, whether it's a half hour, an hour, you got to be selfish with your time. And the reason why it's selfish is every minute that you're not spending with your family, your relationships, the people that are most impactful. I'm sure, everybody saw that message last week. Barry Habib got diagnosed with leukemia, and, obviously he's in our thoughts. But, time is, we only get so much, guys. And it's important that we understand that, like, at the end of the day, the most important things in our lives are the people that, our children, our families, our relationships, and we got to make sure we're spending as much time with them as possible. And in order to do that, we got to execute when we are working. So we're not, being lazy with our time, and we're not having to work more hours than are necessary. So I'll open up for questions. Please feel free to raise your hand or drop your questions in the comments.
Anthony,
go ahead.
About sleep. Have you found that I know that you were famously, early to the office. I also know you go to bed relatively early. Have you found if you invest in like an extra hour or two of sleep that it, makes you more efficient? Like, does more sleep pay off? I know a lot of people in the United States suffer from what's called like sleep debt.
Yeah, I think this is one that I battle with. And like, for years, what I would do is I wouldn't sleep. Like, I would only sleep like maybe 4 to 5 hours a day during the week, and then on the weekends I'd like oversleep. That's not a healthy situation, because again, consistency is key. So what I've really found is like 5 to 6 hours is my key number for no diminishing returns on my focus, and just overall enough sleep for me to be in the best situation possible. But really, it's the other things that matter, Sean, is like, eating healthy, drinking water, not boozing, working out. Like, those other things are the things that really, in combination with sleep, with, my 6 hours of sleep, make me most effective. So, again, I'm not very consistent with all those things, so I'm still trying to dial it in. But I would just tell you that anything you do, whether it's sleep or working out or any of these other things, consistency is the most important factor, whatever the output is. I'm going to share a link in the chat with a full recording. I did about an hour presentation a year ago on this, and I provide a lot more examples and details on really like getting into the weeds on how you manage your time effectively. So feel free to, take a glimpse at that. And if you have any questions, share them with me. But, most important for everybody, call to actions are just understanding that it's not just, you can't just manage your work schedule. You got to manage everything that you interact with on a day-to-day basis.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for everybody for hopping on. If there aren't any last questions. All right.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks so much for your time, Anthony. Thanks, Caden. Thanks, everybody else. Have a wonderful rest of your day.